Pierre Poilievre says he wants to test the confidence of the House as soon as possible. For a little legislative background, if the government loses a vote of confidence, we as Canadians likely get a snap election. So how possible is it that the government would lose that vote if it happens? Let's bring back the front bench to talk about that. Saïd Salvem, Jamie Ellerton, Carol Bélanger, and Marika Walsh. Marika is coming to us from Nanaimo, where Liberal MPs have been meeting for the last few days. Over in Montreal, the NDP has been doing the same, the Bloc in Outaouais. Marika, how's this going over there? What is your anticipation about what the Liberals intend to do this fall?
Well, I think the Conservatives need to realize maybe that the Liberals are not, they are a bit more unsettled that the NDP lost or pulled the plug on their deal, but they're not concerned that they won't have a partner in the House of Commons. The Bloc has already made it incredibly clear that they are willing to play ball with the Liberals on confidence matters if the Bloc gets something in return for Quebec. And that has heartened the Liberals that they will be able to make it through, some say not just to the spring, but even to next fall still. So they absolutely don't want an election this fall. That's clear. That's been made clear to me. But they also think that they will have negotiating partners in the House of Commons still, even with what Pierre Poilievre is saying.
I think it makes sense, say, that they would land at that assumption. The Bloc has been pretty clear that they have lots of things that they can leverage in order to exchange for their support, and their support is more than enough.
Yeah, that's right. And this is an opportunity for the Bloc to get essentially what they want from the governing Liberals by speaking to them about different policies that the Liberals can essentially help put forward that can benefit the province of Quebec. But what's interesting about the Conservative strategy right now, and likely going into the spring and then eventually into the fall, is that the call for a non-confidence vote is going to be consistent, because ideally the Conservative leader wants to start to get Canadian voters to start pressuring their MPs to ideally vote against the Liberals if a potential confidence vote was introduced. So while it may seem that you would need not just the NDP to support a non-confidence vote, but also the Bloc, the Conservatives are trying to bank on the fact that there may be enough discontent amongst Canadian voters to start pressuring their local MPs to start saying that, hey, even though you may vote in favor of the Liberals or you may vote against a non-confidence motion, we need to go to an election, and we need to go to one very, very soon.
Jamie, do you think that even if that pressure was applied to the NDP, there's any sort of political imperative for them to do so, or incentive?
Well, I think what you see with the NDP right now is they are indistinguishable from Justin Trudeau's Liberals, and part of them pulling out of the supply and confidence agreement was to start to build some room between them in advance of the next election. And so whether or not Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives get their way in asking for a carbon tax election and forcing a fall election this fall, or this continues to go on, it just continues to push the NDP and the Liberals together, which broadly reinforces the frame that the only way to get real change in Canada for people who are going to bring affordability, lower taxes, etc., is to vote Conservative. And so whether it's voting this fall or voting next October, it reinforces the political frame that I think Pierre and the Conservatives have quite effectively set for Jagmeet Singh. Every day he's out there banging the table saying he's different and this government's terrible. And whether it's one confidence motion, two confidence motions, three confidence motions, depending how many opposition days there are or how big the omnibus budget bill for the fall economic statement implementation bill is, no matter how many confidence votes there are, if the NDP ultimately are sitting on their hands or voting in favor of the government, it's just reinforcing the Conservative frame that Conservatives are really driving with Canadians. So I don't see real much downside for the Conservatives. And until the NDP actually comes up with an actual alternative credible vision that's grounded in some semblance of economic literacy, I don't think they're going to be able to change track.
I think their message so far is, if I've listened carefully to Mr. Singh, to Jagmeet Singh, Carl, is, yeah, the Liberals are bad, but we actually think the Conservatives would be worse. I think that's how they're going to explain their votes. And I think the other thing is, it's not necessarily that they're going to get those votes, that those opposition motions will be able to be turned into confidence votes immediately. My understanding is the House Minister's office has the ability to push those votes. I think there's 5 that they need to allot. They can push them. This is really technical, but they can push them later in the year. They have to do it before the end of the year. It doesn't mean they have to do it right away. And they actually don't even have to introduce a fall economic statement if they really didn't want to vote like that.
That's right. And frankly, all these things are tactics that will play out in the next few weeks, and we'll be back again to talk about them. But the key thing for the Conservatives is that if they're serious about bringing down the government, they won't frame it the way Jamie just did about the carbon tax election, right? It will be a simple, very simple non-confidence motion that this House has lost confidence in the government, period. If you attach all kinds of policies and rhetoric around it, you give it out to both the NDP and the Bloc Québécois. Now, staying on tactics, the beauty for the NDP is that the Bloc Québécois will always vote before them. So they will always know if the government is surviving or not. That gives them some freedom to vote one way or the other, depending on what's happened just before them. So it will be interesting to see that play out. The Bloc Québécois is in the driver's seat right now in terms of the balance of power.
What does that mean, do you think?
Well,
it's a big deal. A separatist party is essentially holding the balance of power.
Yeah, they hold the balance of power, and they are not afraid to go in an election. It means that if they are to make some gains for Quebec, the government's not going to have to deliver some things. Like, it's not going to be just pro forma. The Bloc is going to use this very carefully. They're not going to roll over because they don't mind going to the polls right now. But if you can show Quebecers that they can make some gains on the problems that we have between Quebec City and Ottawa right now, they'll come out as a winner. So they're on top right now. They're quite comfortable with their situation.
Marika, last word to you on that. How do Liberals feel about bargaining with the Bloc? I mean, to be fair, it's something Harper did to stay in power, too.
Yep.
So it's not unheard of. But boy, oh boy, like, dancing with a partner who doesn't even want to be part of the country. Like, I guess that's where we're at.
I think that's where we're at. That's where all minority governments are at. That's where this government was at between 2019 and 2022 before they had this deal with the NDP. I do have to push back against Jamie a little bit. The Conservatives want an election ASAP as soon as possible because they know things are very good for them in the polls. They don't know what it will look like in the spring. So they do want this. They also have their own interest in wanting it. And the NDP don't need to vote with the government if the Bloc are. So the NDP might have more flexibility than the Bloc are painting it. Whether the NDP can articulate that and make that point to Canadians, I think is very interesting. In the Winnipeg by-election right now, those signs tying Trudeau to Singh are part of the Conservative campaign on the ground.